That's what this is here for. It's an Ask a Trainer session. The topics we're going to cover, you can ask your questions about these topics, or you can ask questions about anything really regarding dog training or relationships with your dog. So today's topics will be reading your dog's body language and learning to take that feedback and respond to it. The other topic we're going to cover is how genetics drive behavior, different breeds, and also your dog as an individual. And also society's expectation of dogs. That's something that has shifted over the years. Had dogs my whole life, so for almost 4 decades. Grew up with German Shepherds, still have German Shepherds. And the way we have chosen to live with our dogs now is very different than it was even decades ago. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And we'll talk a little bit about how that applies to your dog. The other thing we'll also cover is your expectations of your dog and what that looks like and what's a reasonable expectation for your particular dog and how do you get there to reach your goals. And then the final thing we'll actually touch on, which is my most favorite and I feel like the most important, is your relationship with your dog. That, you strengthen that, you're able to do a lot with your dog. So we're going to talk about that at the end. So again, as you're here with us, you can ask your questions, you can just drop them in the chat and I'll address them as they come in. So the first thing we're going to talk about is reading your dog's body language and why it's so important. So reading your dog's body language, like, why would we want to read our dog, right? I think a lot of times we go out with our dog and it doesn't even dawn on us to read our dog's body language and how they're responding to things. A lot of times we're thinking, I'm going to go for a 2-mile walk around my block. This is the walk that I like to do, and I'm going to bring my dog with me. Whether your dog likes that walk, doesn't like that walk, is stimulated by that walk, matters, right? Because we can have our own goals of what we'd like to do with our dog, but we really want to have it be a shared experience when we're with our dog. Makes it so much more enjoyable, right? I like to think of it when I get together with my friends and we do something together. It's fun to do something by myself, but when my friend and I are going, it's like double the fun. So there's a synergy effect, right? And it's more fun to do it together and the energy is more and you're in sync with that person and it just enhances the experience. So thinking of your dog in that way, right? You're not walking your dog. You are sharing something with your dog. You're doing something together, right? So whatever the environment is doing around you, it really comes down to what you and your dog are doing together in that environment, right? So I think it ties a little bit into relationship, but that's what we're going to talk about is how does your dog respond to different things? When you're taking your dog different places, if people come into your home, or really anything that you do with your dog, reading your dog's body language. Is your dog excited by whatever it is? So somebody comes to the house, your dog gets excited, is jumping all over that person, right? What does their body language look like? They move faster, right? They may be more animated. Your dog may go look for their favorite toy to bring to the person and kind of show that off to help channel some of that energy. Are they forward moving? They're trying to push their way to the front door to see that person before you're able to greet them. So are they activated? Are they excited by that in general terms? Or is your dog more inhibited? Is your dog more going to take a couple steps back and assess the situation before they move forward? So thinking of those as kind of different ends of the spectrum, you can have a dog that's very activated, right? Or a dog that's very inhibited and their body language matches. So a dog that's more inhibited may crouch down, their stance gets lower. Their tail may hang low, maybe be between their legs, their ears may go back, their eyes may get big. They may actually use space differently and take a couple steps back. Reading that. Those are kind of the big picture of the activated or inhibited with your dog's body language. There's also everything in between, and sometimes they're conflicting signals. And that's where we get some anxiety and conflict with our dogs. Our dogs may be excited when somebody comes to the door because in general, right? For instance, I'm just using this as an example. Most of the people that come to the door are really awesome, right? And then somebody comes to the door that your dog has never met before, or it's somebody that's wearing a hat, or it's somebody that's in uniform, or the UPS driver decides to knock on the door this time and normally just leaves the packages. And now you have the situation where your dog that's normally okay with it is not okay with it. So that's where it's really important to watch your dog's body language, right? And find out where your dog reacts in different ways to different things. Reading your dog's body language gives you the opportunity to then support your dog. So I'll support my dog differently if they're activated in a situation than if they're nervous in a situation. It still comes down to that relationship and how you do that with your dog, but you really want to look at what your dog's doing first, and then um, you want to look at what your dog's doing first and then respond accordingly. So you're always in this engagement with your dog, or this conversation with your dog where you're like, my dog responded, or I see something, my dog's responding, how do I react? And it's always ebbing and flowing. So your dog, even on a walk, can go from being really calm, loose leash walking, to activated because they saw their best friend dog down the street. Now they're pulling. You're going to navigate that. Then maybe it's trash day and your dog's afraid of trash barrels. Pretty common thing. Then you're walking by a trash barrel and they're like backing away. So in one walk, you can have all of these things. And if you're raising a puppy, even more so, because puppies go through different developmental windows. And as they're figuring things out and we're socializing them, really important to get that feedback. The biggest thing is to respond to your dog and support them, right? So wherever that is, you become that constant, you become that consistent thing for your dog so that they're going to rely on you and your relationship over anything else. So really important to read your dog's body language. And some of these signals are really subtle. So the more that you become an observer of your dog and pay attention to what your dog's trying to communicate to you, the more things you'll catch and the more nuanced your relationship will be, and the more trust that will be built with you and your dog. A lot of times I'll get a call for private training for either behavior modification or just training in general, where somebody will describe something to me and just say it happened out of the blue. She or he has never had a problem with this, and all of a sudden went full force and barked and lunged and didn't bite the person, or didn't, follow through on the action because we stopped her, but it was really scary. And they'll say it came out of nowhere. So there are dogs, again, knowing your dog, knowing body language, that will go from pretty neutral baseline very quickly to that excited state and that activated state. And it'll look like it came from nowhere, but their subtle signals were there. And maybe we didn't see them, or maybe they're so subtle that we didn't pick up on them, right? Like even if we're looking, you're like, I didn't know to look for that, or what signals that is. So thinking about that subtlety and nuance. And when you're with your dog, are you in connection with your dog? If your dog's responding to something, or are you in disconnection? A lot of times if we have a tight leash, there's a disconnect there. A lot of times we also ask our dogs to always be with us and walk nicely with us and do things for us. Within the relationship, there is space for that, and that is very, very important. But we have to also give back to our dogs a little bit too. And when you read your dog's body language, this is where that opportunity really comes in. So I know my dogs love to sniff. So if I'm asking them to walk and heel by a dog or a person on a walking path and have when there's a lot of distractions, yeah, they'll do that really well for me. But I'm also aware that it's a partnership and we're on this walk together. So if I ask them to do that the entire time that we're going, and never give them a chance to sniff, right? Then it's like a kind of like a one-sided walk. I'm asking them to do a lot for me, but like they really just want to sniff the whole time. So we find a combination where they'll do what I need when I need it, right? When there's distractions, and then when there's no distractions, they're allowed to sniff. And I walk with them while they sniff. Not that they're dragging me, but allowing them to actually do what they want to do on a walk, and reading their body language as well, right? So giving my dog the opportunity, I can see when my dog is like, I'm doing a lot of work for you. I can see it in their body language. It's a subtle, their nose will lift, they'll catch a scent. And I use that as an opportunity to have them check in and then reward them with that smell. And I let my dogs, I stand there and let them smell as long as they like to smell, unless I need to interrupt it, and then we move on. So I'm not pulling them away from something they really want to go to, again, unless it's a safety issue. But if they're just sniffing around the base of a tree and maybe they want to mark that tree too, where everybody else's dog's marked. I'm gonna let them do that. And when my dog's satisfied, they lift up their nose, they look at me, and we're ready to carry on. So there's this give and take. If you're watching your dog's body language, you're waiting for them to disengage from that sniffing activity, you have your dog back. They're with you. So you're not fighting that. So conflict will a lot of times come with your dog has one idea of what they'd like to do, and you have another idea. The more you can read their body language and those subtle signals, the more nuance you're going to have, the more connection you'll have with your dog, and you won't have as much conflict. So I work a lot with that with dog training, and in our TAO dog training group classes is relationship building and teaching our dogs to be activated and be calm and work together as a team through all of that. So that's just touching on reading your dog's body language. Kind of an overview. We literally could have days of talking about reading body language videos and really break it down. It's absolutely fascinating to actually look at and understand. But just touching on it today, really thinking about your dog with maybe a different lens as you go out for a walk and working in that partnership. You know, we need our dogs to be accountable for the behaviors they know and accountable to us so that our walks are enjoyable, but also giving your dog some freedom and really honoring that when they're doing something that's okay for them to be doing. Or even my dogs will swim the river and they'll just like swim laps, and there's no reason I need them to come back. You know, I don't need them to come to me. They're not getting into any trouble, and they're just having a good time swimming laps with their balls out in the river. So thinking about that, there's no need to have my dog right with me. It's like, I'm cool with that. If I need to call them to come, then I need them to come, right? And that's some training and obedience, and that's also part of your relationship. But reading that body language when we ask for things, and supporting your dog in that, and becoming really curious, right? Becoming really curious about how your dog does respond to different things in the environment and how you can step up and support them. Let's talk a little bit about genetics. I love genetics. We're just like hitting on all my favorite topics in this discussion. So genetics do drive behavior. Different breeds have certain genetic tendencies, and within that breed, there can be quite a bit of variation. So knowing that when you get a dog, if you're looking to get a new dog, or maybe you've adopted a dog that has a mix of different breeds and you're curious, doing a little bit of research, finding a little bit more about what that dog was bred for originally, what kind of work, because a lot of our dogs are bred for different types of work, and there can be a spectrum within that breed. Also what their tendencies are. So I have German Shepherds. There can be a tendency to be excited, see other dogs and react at other dogs. So when that's happening, I need to know if I start to see that or there's interest there, I'm going to prevent a lot of that before it happens. Working with them, working with me, in the presence of other dogs in a positive way. So genetics do drive behavior. So a lot of times if you're working with your dog and let's give an example, they like to chase squirrels or chase deer, that's within your dog, right? That's a prey drive, a predatory drive. That's within your dog, that when they see movement, it's ingrained in them. Certain dogs are stronger than others. Tao doesn't have that really at all. She can see a deer run across the path and she literally looks at it and carries on. That's just who she is. River, on the other hand, I've had to work really hard to prevent any chase behaviors because within his nature is to catch movement and want to chase it, wild animals. So we've worked really hard on our recall with that and prevention of that happening. Again, genetics, right? I don't have that problem with Tao. I never have to worry about that. So when we're off leash, it's not even a thought. We can have any kind of wildlife come by and she's going to not chase it, number one, and she's going to come back. Whereas River, I'm competing with that genetics, right? I want him to come to me and be compliant, but it's really hard for him. So thinking about how genetics drive your dog's behavior. And I've met people who've called me because they have an 8-week-old puppy. They want to start training, or the puppy's 9 weeks, 10 weeks old. I'm pumped. Love starting puppies really young because you can do so much with a young puppy and shape really the lifestyle and behaviors you want from a young age, also preventing a lot of unwanted behaviors. But even if you adopt your dog at 13 months, a year, 2 years, you get a middle-aged dog or a senior dog, they're going to come with their personality. So I've had people I've worked with from 10 weeks on still go, wait, Steph, I've worked with this dog, I've done this, but why do they still have a propensity to chase deer? because it's within their nature. So there's nothing you've done wrong if you're like, oh my gosh, I've done so much training with my dog, but I can't get them to stop doing this, this, or this. That chase behavior, we're just going to talk about that a little bit because that's what's coming up for me. So I worked with a lot of dogs that chase traffic. That's part of that chase, right? That movement. Traffic can be prey drive. It can also be a little bit of a sensitivity. It can be a noise sensitivity. It's a combination of factors. I've also had dogs I've worked with that are obsessed with balls. So like soccer balls, a soccer field. You know, you go to take your dog for a walk, you're off leash with your dog's solid, social, fine to be off leash, and you didn't realize there's a soccer game going on and you lose your dog and they go and steal a ball and pop it. That chase behavior. So I want you to think about some of that you're going to work with. It's great if your dog has certain drives for chase because you can build it and shape it into what you want, but you have to be mindful of that's within that dog's nature and there's nothing you did wrong, right? We can prevent as much of that. We can try to build confidence with that. But the other thing about genetics is there is a template and baseline. So what we do is we take that genetic package, we layer training, socialization, relationship, experiences on top of that to have your dog be the most confident dog that it can be with you in your lifestyle and those layers. But if you reach a plateau where you go, this is as good as my dog's going to get with this thing because they have that genetic limitation, you've done everything you can. Right? Some dogs are meant to be, so let's talk a little bit about working dogs and genetics. Some dogs are meant to be police dogs. Some are meant to be guide dogs. Some are meant to be service dogs. There are dogs out there as facility dogs, and they're very calm. You wouldn't want a police dog who's got a ton of energy being the same dog that you're bringing into a school and asking the dog to lay down calmly and be pet by kids for an extended period of time. Occasionally, you can find a dog that can do both. But usually if you're looking for a specific dog to do a specific job, you want those genetics that are going to lean them that way. Same goes for your pets. So if you adopt a dog and this is fun and this can happen. And it can be fun because it can be a surprise in a way that you're like, I didn't realize my dog liked this, this, or this, and it opens up doors. And it also can be a little bit fun in an interesting way where maybe you've adopted a dog that you think is a certain mix, but it's really got other things in there that are coming into play in terms of traits, and you're surprised. You thought maybe when you got your puppy it was going to be low energy. Turns out it's actually a high energy dog. And at first that can be a little bit challenging because there's a mismatch. You wanted a dog that was low energy, but now it has these other needs. So we need to figure out ways to meet those needs because that's that dog's genetics. You won't take a dog that has high energy and ask it to be low energy. I've had dogs that, you meet at 2 and they're high energy and they maintain that energy. Maybe it slows down a little, but by the time they're 10 or 11, they're still pretty energetic. So, Tao still loves to go out and do a lot of active things, hiking and everything. She still has that element of energy. Now that she's 10, she requires more rest in between, but she can still bring that level of energy, and she's always had that. That's how she's been her whole life. She can turn it on, and then she can turn it off. So there can be a little bit of a mismatch, but that's genetics. Like if you got a dog that you thought was a certain mix, and all of a sudden it's surprised it's actually a mix of this, we work with that. Right? There's nothing you did wrong. There's nothing wrong with your dog. It's just understanding what that dog needs, who that dog is, and how to support it, right? And how to help it match into your lifestyle. So if you're someone that has to work full time and that dog requires a lot of energy and you're able to get that outlet in the middle of, in the beginning of your day, but then you're like, oh, that dog needs after 4 hours, maybe he's in a crate, he needs, other exercise. A lot of times people have someone come walk their dog, exercise their dog. There's different playgroup options for dogs. A couple times a week, they can go do that for outlets. So matching your lifestyle, there's so many opportunities now for dogs to be able to do things that expend that energy in a productive way so that you can find that balance with your dog. What's really cool is when you get a dog that's genetic template and temperament, personality really match your lifestyle. Those dogs just come into your life. They're seamless. There's some training you put into it, but you're like, wow, I never knew having a dog could be this easy. Still work, right? There's effort we put into that to build that bond and to do that. But there are dogs that you will have that just seamlessly fit into your life. I always call those soul dogs when they do. They come into your life and you're just like, this is the perfect dog. I wish I could have this dog forever. right? And if you've had one of those, you know what that is. And if you haven't had one of those, being open to that. You may have a dog that crosses your path. If you're lucky to have more than one of those in a lifetime, yeah, consider yourself very lucky. It's pretty magical to be able to share your life so fluidly and with such ease with a dog that's matched just in the right ways with you. That being said, every dog has its quirks. And by quirks, I don't mean that in a negative way. They have things that come with that. So Tao, I would consider my soul dog. We're matched really well. Our lifestyle, I've really enjoyed having her for the past 10 years. We've done a lot together, um, but she's got her quirks. She's very independent. So that's something I have to always train. If now that it's nice out and she's out in the yard, I tell her to come in. She's like, nah, you're gonna have to come get me. So she's 10. We have a good relationship, a lot of training, but that's part of our relationship is she's always trying to negotiate me a little bit. And I'm okay with that because everywhere else, she doesn't negotiate, and she's really good on her recall. So I know what she's saying. She's saying she doesn't want to come in because it's beautiful, and I don't really blame her. So we work that piece. She also has an obsession with cats. Um, didn't have a ton of exposure when she was young because I didn't have cats myself, and my parents had cats, but they were nervous with dogs, so we always kept them separate. So she's always had this curiosity. She's not aggressive, but she will fixate on cats for like hours and kind of obsess over them. So it's a quirk. Does that mean that affects my life with her at all? No, it doesn't. And if she's around cats, she can be around them, say hi to them, and then I just ask her, to move on and manage it a little bit, right? But that's a quirk. It doesn't make her a bad dog. Could I have done more cat exposure when she was younger? Definitely, yes. So, I could look at that. There was room there for opportunity and growth. But for me, like, it doesn't matter, right? So you pick and choose your battles too. Like, she's not going to hurt them. I don't live with cats. We don't see them frequent enough that it's ever an issue. So you can even have your soul dog, maybe what you consider your perfect dog for you. They're always going to have quirks. I also want you to think about genetics from the human side. When we're with our dogs, we bring a human component to it. How we show up matters. So I'm a very I should say activated person, but I can be very calm for sure, but I'm also very quick pace. I think quickly, I move quickly. My dogs and I are doing a lot during the day, and that's kind of my baseline. And I know that's what I bring to my relationship with my dogs is this element of we're going, we're having fun. This is why I love dog yoga so much because it's taught me to show up differently with my dogs, not only through the practice of dog yoga, but in every other thing that I do with my dogs. So there's this element of calm. Even if I'm with my dogs and we're hiking or I'm with River training for our sport that we train in, and we're up and having a good time, I'm still really anchored and calm. So I can be really animated and be a lot of fun, but I'm not, I would say, scattered, right? That energy isn't moving like this. It's very channeled and focused. Dog yoga has helped me with that. That's why I love sharing it with all of you because it's such a great way to connect with your dog, learn what that feeling is, and then seek that out in your lifestyle with your dog. But thinking about the human component, we all are who we are, right? And there's nothing wrong with who we are. We're all individual. What makes me tick is different than what makes you tick. Our routines are different. What we like to do, how we live our lives is all different, and it's all beautiful, right? But thinking about your lifestyle, who you are, and working with your dog, right? That relationship over years with your dog gets deeper and deeper and changes as you learn to interact with each other, right? So with Tao, I can be really energetic and it doesn't affect her that much. She's a little calmer. With River, my energy bumps up. He's like, woohoo! So he's going to take it there. So I have to be really mindful when we're doing things together that, if we're going to get excited, I have to think about it a little bit before I get too excited. So thinking about the human, thinking about you. Society, let's talk a little bit about society and expectations of dogs. That's shifted a lot over the years and over the decades. And when I'm working with private clients for dog training, a lot of times I'm working on some overstimulation or reactivity, whether it's with dogs or people, a lot of times with dogs, or just being overstimulated by the environment. So a lot of times when I'm out, we're working with, I would say, society, people around us, distractions around us. those are distractions, and teaching people to be with their dog no matter what's going around. It's really about what you two are doing, regardless if there's a soccer game going on or a dog walking by or really any kind of thing going on. But there's been this shift, what I've noticed when I'm out working my dogs or with other people and their dogs, where every dog should be social with every being, meaning that your dog should be able to be pet by everybody that wants to pet your dog. And this can be breed specific. So when I'm out walking with River or even Tao, people don't ask to pet my dog. When I have a German Shepherd next to me, even if he's walking nicely, people don't tend to approach. But certain breeds, Labradors, Golden Doodles, Labs, any cute mixed breed that's just adorable. Like, I have the same impulse. They're adorable. Love to say hi to every dog. I don't, right? Because I believe a person is out with their dog, and that's them enjoying that, and that they don't, it's not about me, right? It's not about me saying hi. But there's been this shift that if your dog doesn't want to say hi to people, that people actually get offended by that. And I find that really interesting because there's been this shift, like, and I always ask, like, why is it okay for someone to pet my dog or touch my dog? Maybe my dog doesn't like that. And so, again, tying back into reading your dog, both of my dogs are social. River's the most social German Shepherd I've ever had. He thinks everyone's his friend. So we worked really hard when he was younger to ignore people and just focus on me. Different problem. Tao ignores people, but she's social, right? And aloof. So if people go to pet Tao, I've actually taught her to greet on command. So I tell her to go say hello, and she knows that's to go and engage a person, because otherwise people reach down and she just ignores them, right? She's social, but aloof, right? In that way. All of our dogs are different, but I don't let people pet my dogs that don't know my dogs. If I'm working with a training client or my friends come over, my dogs are interacting with them because they know them. But I don't, almost never. I can't tell you the last time I've had anyone that I don't know out in the street greet my dogs. And I encourage most of the people I work with who are dealing with reactivity or overstimulation, or a dog that's dragging them because they're social to everybody, to scale it way back. And maybe they say hi to your neighbor because that's their favorite person. But other than that, they're not saying hi. And it gets sticky if somebody asks to pet your dog and you say, hey, no, like, I'm working with my dog. I'm training my dog. I'm actually training my dog to ignore people. He's a little too excited. You can say it as nice as you can. Usually if you say it nice and polite, like, hey, no, thank you. We're just working on some training today. Appreciate you asking, and keep moving. People are really receptive. But you will get people, I still do, that say that get upset that I won't let them pet my dog or a client's dog that I'm working with. And I have no problem setting that boundary. And that it's a promise I'm making to my dog. If my dog is uncomfortable, I want to protect my dog. And so I can have a dog, that maybe is a little bit nervous with people sitting beside me, and someone can be fairly close to me, but that dog knows that I'm not going to let that person come up to them, because that's what I've built in my relationship. So if you have a dog that's nervous, not letting people say hi really supports your dog, and it builds your relationship. Your dog looks at you, you're like, thank you. I didn't want to say hi to that person, right? Or if your dog's overly excited, you want to condition your dog when people approach to sit calmly beside you. You don't want them to say hi. If they think they can say hi to everybody, they're going to be jumping on everybody. I always think of protecting my dog, and I think of it as a promise I make to my dog. I want to protect my dog also from jumping up on somebody, or accidentally their mouth is open and it touches somebody and they think my dog bit them by accident, even if my dog would never do that. And I know that they wouldn't do that. That perception. So there's like this double standard, right? Everyone should be able to pet your dog, but if something goes wrong, you're in hot water and you might be sued. So it's this interesting world we're living in with our dogs. What I like to bring to my life with my dogs is that element of my promise to them. And when we're out, it's just us. And they know that. And they have a few favorite people that I hike with, and they can say hi to, that we train a lot together, something like that. But still, that's within like almost like their family, small family group. And I encourage everyone to advocate for their dogs. So when we're on our hiking adventures we do together, or we're in dog yoga class any of the canine fitness classes, or even our dog training classes. Most importantly, our dog training classes. I'll always say to people, we're not going to allow the dogs to greet each other. And I leave it up to the handlers, so all of you, right, the owners of your dogs, to decide if you want your dog to greet another dog. And I'll tell you, majority of the people go like, thank you, no, I don't, I'm working on this or I'm working on that, or my dog is a little bit reactive and this is a safe environment. It's so important for me to create that promise to everybody that comes to my classes, that it's a safe environment. Dogs are on 6-foot leash. Dogs are with you with equipment that you're working with your dog. You have your tools, your treats, your place. We've got everything that we need. So your dog can feel safe too, and your dog can relax, and you can work the most of your relationship that you can with your dog. That safety is really important. It's a promise we make to our dogs, and you don't owe anything to anybody, right? Nobody has to pet your dog, right? Like, giving yourself that permission is huge, is so important, and it will change your relationship with your dog. A lot of times in dog training, people talk about leadership, being a leader, and it's just this like coin term, and it's vague. I think of that as an opportunity for leadership. I tell my dog to sit. They know the rule. Nobody's coming up to you. So when River was a puppy, he's like, I'm excited. I'm like, no, you sit there. And I would talk to the person and be like, no, I'm not going to have you greet him. I'm working on him sitting calmly. Feed him for that, treat him for that, reward him for that, talk to him through that, and condition that behavior. Over repetition, consistency, right? He learned that. Your dog can learn that too. It's right. That's my promise. Like, yeah, no one's coming up. When we're out, it's just us two. And you'll find that, and when I'm working with people and their dogs and that shift happens, the feedback that you'll get from people walking by is, wow, what a gentleman. I wish my dog would do that. Wow, what a well-behaved dog. Right? And all the dog is doing is laying calmly or sitting with you. Right? And it's unmistakable. That level of connection you can have with your dog, that level of calm connection, people walk by, they don't even know you. And instead of somebody saying, can I come over and pet your dog? The response will be very different. It's very clear that you're with your dog and they're relaxed and you're relaxed. From that space, if you genuinely have a dog that likes to greet people and is pretty appropriate, and we can also teach them to be appropriate, greeting a person can then be a reward. Not every time. But from a calm place, yeah, you do get to go say hi to that person. And then you come back and you hang out with me. Right? So that kind of relationship, teaching your dog to be with you, is important. And I want to touch on that, society's expectation. Never be afraid to advocate for you and your dog. To say no to somebody. Hey, no, we're working on training. Not today, thanks, we're working on training. You just keep going. Right? A lot of times people ask, is your dog social? And a lot of times I'm like, yes, but I prefer they don't say hi. Because sometimes if you say, yeah, they're social, there's an incoming dog no matter what, and someone's coming into your dog's bubble. Those type of uncontrolled greetings, those type of things really can harm your relationship with your dog. Creating a relationship with your dog where you're always, and it's like a natural leadership, right? You're not telling your dog, I'm the leader, but you're showing your dog by example that you are. That you're in control of the environment, that if they're nervous, you're like, I've got you. And if my dog's nervous, they will actually, I'll say, hey, yeah, we're actually going to get a little distance from this too. I see that you're nervous. Thanks for letting me know. We're going to get more distance and then watch from there. So we have some questions. Let's see, Barbara. Barbara just chimed in. Thank you for the piece of training advice. It is often difficult to say no when people ask to pet my pup. I will now remember my promise to my pup to keep her safe and in a positive space. Well, Barbara, thank you for that feedback. And Barbara raises guide dog puppies. So we teach them to be social. It's a hard line, Barbara, because you want your dog to accept being touched if it happens, or to be able to interact with a person, because as guide dogs, unfortunately, even though people aren't supposed to touch them, they do, right? So you want to make sure there's there's a little bit of exposure. But I love that reinforcement of that promise, right, to your pup, that you're like, yeah, no, I've got this. And then from that space, Barbara, you choose, right? You choose whether your dog gets to say hi to somebody or not. I'm also very selective when I have a puppy of who I let them greet and meet. I want those experiences to be positive. I want my dog to know that people are safe and good. So when I do those few greetings when my dogs are younger, or even when they're older, I make sure that it's an experience where I know it's going to be a good one. So thank you for the feedback, Barbara. I love to hear that. let's move on to your expectations for your dog. So we have other people's expectations. What are your expectations for your dog? And are they reasonable for the amount of effort that you're putting in? Ooh, maybe you didn't think of it that way. So are your expectations of your dog reasonable for how much you're putting into your relationship with your dog? It's kind of a big question. Sometimes we expect a lot from our dogs. We do. We expect them to be really good everywhere we go all the time. We expect them to have no bad manners in the house and to do this and that. But are we being realistic? Some dogs have limitations with certain things in terms of their personality, their temperament, and also how much effort are we putting in? So if you want your dog to walk nicely with you on a leash, you've got to practice that. And it doesn't mean that you have to walk 3 miles a day. So I don't walk my dogs on a 6-foot leash often. We do a lot of off-leash stuff because that's what I enjoy to do with them. But when I do walk them on a leash, I'm mindful. I get into that mindset of loose leash walking. My dogs learned how to walk on a leash up and down my driveway when they were puppies. So I didn't take them for a long walk on a leash. It was just a training skill. So they know when they have a 6-foot leash and I tell them to come to heel, that they've got to, doesn't mean they don't still try to get ahead of me, because they're shepherds and they like to think a lot. Doesn't mean it's perfect, right? That's not what it's about, but it's about practice. If I practice that all the time with my dogs, I did a lot when they're little, and now I can pull it out. It's a known skill. If I haven't done that on a 6-foot leash, walk my dogs in that way for 2 months in a structured way, my expectations are going to be lower. I haven't practiced that. It's just like us. If we don't do something for 2 months, I think of yoga, right? If we aren't practicing our yoga and then we hop on our mats and think we're going to jump right back into the practice we had 6 months ago when we were going multiple times, practicing multiple times a week. Same thing. We're a little rusty. They're a little rusty. It doesn't take much once you have them trained to refresh it. Hey, come back here. A little reminder. Yeah, that's what I want from you. And bring it back in. But I always lower my expectations if I haven't done it in a while. Same goes for your expectations if you've been training your dog. You've got to increase those expectations and accountability for your dog. Sometimes we get stuck in a place where we're just like, I'm just going to keep talking about loose leash walking because it's something that we also, almost all of us are working on all the time, is we get in this game where like we almost just feed, and we just become, I call it like the Pez dispenser, right? It just keep, feeding. And how do we break away from that food? If we do, then they get out of position. So sometimes when we linger in one phase of training and those expectations aren't high enough, we get stuck. So I work with a lot of people to move them out of that, moving dogs away from food being offered so frequently, and shifting that paradigm with the food so it holds more value. So that food can be more valuable as a tool. Your dog's going to want to earn it more. The expectations are higher to earn that reward. So expectations can go both ways. And also just a baseline of expectation. If you expect your dog to be perfect and know how to live in your life, you adopted a dog a week ago and you think they should just do everything you do, how much effort have you put into that? You have to be honest with yourself about that. If you want certain things with your dog, there's work associated with it. If you want your dog to be good at settling, you have to practice settling, right? So we like to do all the fun activated stuff. I do too. And that's why about 5 years ago, I started practicing dog yoga with TAO, and then have brought that into classes and different offerings. Is we didn't do any of that. We couldn't sit at a bench and have it be just, oh, I'm drinking a cup of coffee, or I'm hanging out with a friend and her dog, and my dog can relax. And it surprised me because TAO is, has a lot of skills and stuff for their training. So even that, we had to practice that. Dog yoga for me was just such a fun way. I love to practice yoga. My dog learns to be calm. Teaching the calm touch handling that we do in our classes. I've conditioned a behavior that when TAO went to the vet today, I was able to use to calm her, to kind of keep her a little calmer in the vet office, as well as be able to kind of get to that space with her when I need to, when we're out and about and I want her to relax. So I had to practice that. Well, once I was like, oh, I'm going to practice this, it wasn't easy at first. The more I practiced it, the quicker and quicker it came. And that just became part of our relationship and our paradigm. So whatever you want, you have to put the effort in. And you have to be honest with yourself. If you don't want to put the effort in and you don't care that much about it, that's okay too. If it's not a safety issue, right? If a behavior is a safety issue, then you kind of have to address it. But there's certain things people don't care about. They're like, I don't mind if the dog does this. I'm like, cool, Like, that's fine. It's not a safety issue. Like, there's no need to change it, right? People ask me, should my dogs never be on the furniture? Should my dog never be on my bed? I have no hard set rules on that, but if it's playing into a relationship problem, I will address it, right? So if your dog is on your bed and not letting you get into bed, then the dog is going to not have to be on your bed. That's a more extreme example. But if we're having issues in a relationship, it's things to look at. But I have no problem. I watch TV at night. My dog's curled up on the couch with me. It's all good, right? Within our relationship, they can do that. Also, if I tell them they need to get off and make room for my husband to sit down, they've got to get off. They've got to get off the couch. And they know that too, right? So you create this rules in the relationship, and it can be quite nuanced, right? So I have no hard, fast rules with dogs in the way I live with them or teach people to live with them. It's just very specific to that individual dog and that relationship. So let's talk a little bit about relationship. When I think about relationship with dog, I think of the word trust. And we had touched on the word promise, right? So I think of that word trust. If your dog trusts you and you trust your dog, you can have so much freedom with your dog. When you work through those tougher things, sometimes it's hard for us to work on the areas of conflict because they're uncomfortable or frustrated. It just straight up feels icky. It's like, ugh, I don't like walking my dog because the pulling, it's so bad. If we start to move towards that, work on it, chip away at it, look at what's really going on there in the relationship, that can be one of the most rewarding things. So those harder spots to work on with your dog, because once you figure out those areas of conflict with your dog, there's trust built there. There's understanding. And if you have that trust, you really can do anything with your dog. Thinking of trust in any relationship you have, whether it's with a friend, a spouse, a child, your dog, right? Or anyone in your life, or even think of like a therapist, right? Or a life coach. People that you have trust in, that there's so much growth that can happen. There's a lot that can be done there. If you break trust, right? Sometimes you have to repair it. Sometimes if you break trust, it can't be rebuilt. Not necessarily the same with dogs. I like to think of, okay, you work on something, maybe something just happened, right? And you can't control it because that is life and things happen all the time. So your dog was like, uh-oh, that didn't go well. That was scary. You both were nervous. You both were surprised or startled, right? And there's a little bit of that trust that's broken down. You work to build that back up, right? So there's always that trust. There's a baseline of trust you have, and you always work to continue to maintain that trust, just like all the rest of your relationships. The promises we make to our dogs to keep them safe, to really read, tying it all together, reading your dog's body language, seeing that feedback, and then using that, right? Your expectations of your dogs, advocating for your dog. Society maybe wants something, but what do you want for your dog? What's most important for you to your dog? And I think about that too. I'll leave that with the trust, and then we'll open up to even more questions. Is with, that's my train of thought. I was like, trust. When I was thinking about questions you guys have coming in. So your relationship, building trust with your dog. I lost my train of thought. This happened at dog training class too last week. But we've covered everything. So reading your dog's body language, the better you can respond, this is what I want to say, the better you can respond to your dog's body language, the more trust you're going to build in your relationship with your dog. Okay? Does that make sense? If you're paying attention, then you're getting feedback. You're reacting to that feedback your dog is giving you with your own feedback for your dog. Right? That will strengthen that trust. If you have an incident where something happened and you both panicked and it was like, it went bad, right? Okay, let's acknowledge that happened, right? And I've worked with a lot of people that have had kind of like a traumatic event happen with their dog, and we work through it. Addressing the dog, addressing yourself. There's a two-part there. You can build that back, right? So again, you're gonna maybe had a traumatic event, your dog's afraid to go to a certain place. You're gonna slowly build that back, right? Based on your trust in your relationship. So I have some, looks like some questions coming in, some comments. So I'm going to read them. And I've covered everything that I wanted to cover too. Okay. Barbara said, there are days when I only have time for one walk and I really need to be in an exercise walk versus a casual stroll. I could leave the pup at home, but she needs exercise too. Got it. How is best to handle the needs of my pup to sniff, have her time, etc.? Give her time to start and end, use different equipment, harness versus collar. So that's a good question. If I'm going to give my dog more freedom, I do like to switch equipment. If you're doing it the way you're doing it, Barbara. So if she's got uh, a gentle leader, right? That's more of your formal walks. That's what I would use when you have formal walks. And then I would switch her to because I know you and your dog, a martingale collar and give her more freedom as long as you have control with that. And if she pulls too strongly, that you may need to switch to a different collar so that you have a little bit more control. Because she's a guide dog, if you're working with a pet dog and you want to give your dog more freedom and make the distinction between loose leash walking, kind of heel formal, versus you're off duty for a walk, I would use a harness. If you have a dog that's pulling really hard, a front clip harness. If you have a dog that doesn't pull as hard, you can clip to the back of a harness. For you specifically, Barbara, because you're training a guide dog puppy, you wouldn't want to match a harness with sniffing, because what we teach them when they have a jacket on or their harness when they become guide dogs in training, we teach them to not sniff when any of that is on. So you'll actually be teaching the opposite of what you want to be teaching when she comes in for the guide program. So for you, I would switch to a martingale collar, letting her have a little bit more control that way, or a different type of collar too. And you and I can talk more about that next time I see you as well. But most of the time I will with pet dogs, but for you, you don't want to condition the harness because it'll be so hard in training and confusing to her if you have to break the sniffing every time a harness is on when she thinks from puppyhood that's what she's supposed to do. Hope that was clear. Hi, Denise. Any suggestions for a shepherd's anxiety when we have to leave for work? You must have read my mind, Denise, because I literally worked with somebody who had a German Shepherd today who were working on separation anxiety. So it depends. How old is your dog, Denise? If you could let me know. I think I got your when you signed in. I think he's 10 months old, right? If I'm not mistaken. 10 months. Perfect. So when you're working with a younger dog, I like to teach dogs to use a crate when they're really, really young. Separation anxiety is a tricky one because some dogs have a little bit of a genetic predisposition to it, first of all. And then second of all, sometimes it's experience. Like if you had a rescue dog, they may have gone through some changes. And so they're nervous about people leaving them. If you're working with a puppy that you got and it's slowly developing, right? As you worked with your puppy, maybe you didn't see it at first, but now, or you've had a routine change. Oh, now we need to create this dog or leave this dog. I like to work separation anxiety in little stages. And depending on the severity of it, because I've worked a lot of cases of it, I like to start with, because you have a 10-month-old puppy, some form of containment. With separation anxiety, dogs, when they're anxious, can destroy things. So they'll like chew through things, destroy a couch, chew through doors, and they can do a lot of damage and to your home, but also to themselves. So with that, I like to have a secure crate or a room where we can gate them if they're not okay in a crate. So if your dog is good in a crate, what I start with dogs is using a Kong toy or a Topple from Westpaw brand. I'm in love with the Topples over the Kongs now because they're easier to clean and stuff. What I'll teach my dogs is to go in their crate and they only get that special toy. And I'll talk to you about how to fill it and stuff. They'll only get that special toy when they're in that crate. So what we condition our dog to do is when I take this toy that I've stuffed and is frozen, my dogs, when I pull that out, they all run to their spots, whether it's their bed or their crate, because it's such a conditioned response. And they are excited to go in their crate and get this special thing. And they actually want me to do that. But where we want to start with that is where you're still in your dog's presence. So if you have a crate and you have this toy and you have your dog go in there, you want to close your dog, see if they start working on the toy. And it could be your crate is in your living room, right? In your space, and you're right in there with your dog while you're doing it. Where separation anxiety starts is our dogs become conditioned of being crated, and we only crate them when we leave. So dog training is a lot of different things, but with this, it's called what I consider conditioned behavior. So what's happening with the dog is when you put them in their crate, if you're using a crate, and maybe you can chime in, Denise, and let me know if you're using a crate. When we put a dog in a crate, every time they're in that crate, they know you're leaving. They don't want you to leave, and they get super anxious about it. So what I'd rather condition is every time that I'm going to put my dog in my crate, you are using a crate. Excellent. Every time I'm going to put my dog in a crate, I'm going to have that toy, and that's the only place they get it. So what instead you're conditioning your dog is not, hey, I'm putting you in your crate, I'm leaving you, panic. You're conditioning your dog, hey, you want to go in your, you want this good toy, you want this really great thing that I have, you can have it. Let's get in your crate. You can have it in there. And have your dog work on that. Changing, like, right, conditioning your dog to think of it as something different. But for you, Denise, it might be too big of a leap to just use that toy and leave right now because your dog is a pattern of being in a crate and leaving. So you need to break that down just a little bit if you're able to with your routine and your lifestyle, right? And like your everyday time that you're leaving. So what I like to do is start with that toy, put that toy in the crate, have my dog run in. If your dog will be good with the door closed, and then be right in that room. So like I'll watch TV. My dogs are just working on bones and Kongs, like in crates when they're little puppies. Or if I have a dog, I'm working on separation anxiety. If we start there, TV's going, you're just relaxed, you're calm, your dog is working on that toy. What you'd want to do is before your dog finishes that toy, you want to go open the crate and ask your dog to come out, bring me that toy. I'm going to take that toy and I'm actually going to put it back in the freezer. And he didn't finish it. So you're actually interrupting that. If you can take the toy away, as long as your dog's not guarding anything or resource guarding or anything like that, you want to be careful if you're doing that. But I want to interrupt that. My dog is so into that toy, and I want to be like, hey, guess what? I'm back. I'm returning to you when you're having this great experience and you're really into what you're doing in there and you love being in here. And they're kind of annoyed at me. They're like, what? You're interrupting this? I'm like, I am. Ask my dog to come out. I take that toy, I put it back in the freezer. So you can do small little sessions, and you might do that for 5-10 minutes to start, little bits throughout your day when you're home. So it may be if you're working it, like say you're home on a weekend, but then you have to go back to work Monday, just start this, right? There's no perfect way. You can't just stop leaving your dog, right? But I want you to start to do it when you're home. So your dog has this association with the crate being amazing and you're not leaving. From there, what I'll do is, once your dog is really running to the crate, is get up. I walk to the kitchen. I might grab a cup of coffee if it's the morning, or I grab a glass of water and I come back and I keep watching my show, grab a snack, whatever. Ignore your dog. When you come and go, don't talk to your dog. Your dog goes back, keeps working on it. Awesome. You want to end the session and take it out before you go, so that you work up to where you have longer times. And you're also, you might also go outside, get something from your car. You build it into where you can leave for little bits. You can even just be outside doing things. You don't need to actually drive away or anything to separate yourself from your dog. Building up to then when you're actually going to work and stuff like that. And I don't take that toy away. If I have a dog with separation anxiety, it's again a little bit of a promise, at least right now, until you have it really, really solid, which can be months. That's my promise. Every time I'm leaving you, you get this rocking toy that you love, and it's only for that. Let's see. Oh, excellent, Denise. Perfect timing. So if you have a Kong or like the Westpaw Topple toys, how I stuff them is if your dog eats kibble, if your dog eats raw, you can actually stuff it with raw and freeze it and give it to your dog. If your dog is eating kibble, I'll use things like peanut butter and mix it with my dog's kibble and put that in the Kong and then freeze it. Or I'll do canned pumpkin or Greek yogurt. You just don't want any sweeteners. They put a lot of sweeteners in yogurt now that aren't good for dogs. So just a plain, kind of Greek yogurt or plain yogurt. You can put a little bit of that in. So you're not packing any of these things with like a ton of peanut butter or a ton of like novel thing that can give your dog diarrhea or just be way too many calories. So I'll skim back on my dog's meals and I'll use these instead and provide enrichment. My dogs are 10, 11, and 4. And I still use stuffed bones and these Topple toys and Kongs for my dogs, just for enrichment, for fun. My dogs will run to the crates. We've worked through the separation stuff by preventing it when they were puppies. But it's still so highly reinforced to the point of my dogs still get that. Say it's even once a week. build that in so it keeps the behavior strong. We talked a little bit earlier about what we practice. Dogs get really, really good at and they become really strong in. This is the same thing. You want your pup to be driven to go to that crate and excited about that crate. So it's the company's West Paw, and it's Topple. It's TOPPL, no E. So West Paw Topple. I can type it in too, that way it's easier. I made caps, that's all good. Yeah, I'm so glad you could join us, Denise. And give it a try. Give it a try. And kind of shifting that paradigm for your dog would be really, really awesome, right? Instead of being worried about you leaving, he'll be excited. All right. Anybody else have any other questions? We're at the hour mark, but I'll hang for a little bit if anybody had any questions specific to what we talked about. If you're just on TAO Dog's YouTube channel, because this is open and to the public, and you're joining us, we're talking about different things about dog training and really talking about relationship with our dogs and working on some specific behaviors. So I'll hang out for just a few more minutes, wait for any last minute questions. And thank you all for joining. Yeah, it's been a great session.